If you got some money to burn and would like to support my channel, check out JList or Play Asia. If you don't need games or Japanese imports, be sure to support my channel on Patreon or Maker Support. The links to everything mentioned can be found in the video description.
So this is Louis, and it is early in the morning, and I'm still sick. And we're going to see if we can hammer out a take where I talk about this. I don't really want to call it a puff piece. It is covering the sort of rising influence of Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who's the junior senator of New York. I've worked for her. I worked in her Buffalo satellite office. I met a few important people there, one of which he was not an intern, but an employee who worked under the staffer that ran that office, and he got employed by her, and he moved down to Washington, D.C., and now he works in her main team. So I've met a few people that are actually pretty important to the senator. I've met her when she did a press op in, I believe it was Jamestown, I want to say. But I've met her before, and I know a little bit about her. I know a little bit about the inner workings of her office. And the recent, sexual scandals that have come out of Hollywood and that, she has seized upon this moment, and she has thrown Bill and Hillary Clinton under the bus. Maybe I can find an article where she mentions this, but this has become sort of an important story in Washington, D.C., that she is now breaking away from Bill and Hillary Clinton, and she has thrown them both under the bus. And for those of you that are not like politicos, people that are like, political junkies, this is a big thing, especially as a New York senator, because there's a long history here, and I'm not going to get into it because it's boring. But Hillary Clinton was a senator in New York for a while. She did just about fuck all except for a vote for the Iraq War. That's kind of the thing that she was known for. She was a terrible senator. She did nothing. She polluted this state's politics like nobody else. She still has a very lasting influence on the state. If you want to be powerful in New York politics, you have to fucking kiss her ring. You have to genuflect before the Clintons. I'm not too sure how much longer that's going to be true, because what Kirsten Gillibrand did was a risky move, in that she has once again rebranded. She's done this multiple times before. When she was in Congress, she was a more rural, quasi-centrist, more of a corporate centrist, like a corporatist, blue dog Democrat. And I've talked about the blue dogs before, but the blue dogs were, in essence, the epitome of Clintonite era Democrats, where you are pro-gun and maybe anti-abortion. You appeal to centrist politics that are popular, but otherwise you are a full-blown corporatist. That's who you are at your core. You're there to represent the insurance companies. You're there to represent the cable companies. You're there to represent the companies that give to that free speech to the Democratic Party, as Ben Shapiro would put it. Even in this Politico piece, they talk about how she used to be part of the quote-unquote no labels portion of Washington, D.C. politics, which is like an amalgamation of corporatist Democrats and uber corporatist Republicans. And still to this day, with Republicans, and it's why I'm not a Republican, why I'm not a conservative, they have a blind spot and they have a weakness to corporatism. They are seemingly unable to understand that if you give donations to a politician and they act upon those donations and they act in the interests of their donors, meaning cable companies, insurance companies, all the rest, that is legalized corruption. That is not you actually, having principles, having beliefs, respecting the interests and the viewpoints of your constituency. It's instead just representing those that are donating to you that are likely outside of your district, likely outside of your constituency. It's just making sure that whoever donates to you is getting their way. But otherwise, you give red meat out to your voters. Like, oh, I hate guns, or I love guns, or I'm pro women's rights, or I hate abortion and Jesus. Like, it's just pandering. But otherwise, you're just doing what the donors want. That's what this whole no labels, pseudo-centrist bullshit is about. That's what the Blue Dogs were about. And the Blue Dogs, which she was a member of, got obliterated right around 2008, and especially in 2010, and again in 2012. And they were ultimately destroyed, I want to say, in 2012. The Blue Dogs no longer exist. And I believe it was in 2011, I want to say, that she rebranded away from Blue Dogs into becoming a quote-unquote progressive. But that is how she rebranded. She actually did it before Hillary Clinton. Kirsten Gillibrand is a slick politician. There's an example that I can give of this Gavin guy, who I believe is still the lieutenant governor of California. She's a lot like the female version of him, in that she is very slick. She knows exactly what she needs to say. She knows the exact issues to cover. She knows when the time is right to shapeshift and to shed her skin and to become a different kind of politician. Merkel is supposedly like that as well. In Germany, she's a lot like that as well, supposedly. I wouldn't know, but that's what I've been told. So what I know about Gillibrand is that she is 100% about the optics. And so in that way, she's actually more intelligent than Hillary Clinton, who is not always concerned about the optics and will often make blunders because of that. In that way, Hillary Clinton is actually a worse politician than Kirsten Gillibrand. Kirsten Gillibrand's actually a more effective politician than Hillary Clinton. She can also raise, as it says in this magazine, this article from Politico, she's actually also very, very good at fundraising, which is another big part of Clintonite politics. It's not about the Bernie-style raising of small dollars. It's big money donors. But unlike Cuomo, who's also like this, and maybe I'll dig up an article about him, Cuomo is also very good at raising big money, but he is fucking hated. Kirsten Gillibrand, on the other hand, doesn't have that same kind of hatred about her. If you were to ask me why I feel it necessary to do this commentary and why this political piece is important to talk about and why it's important to talk about her breaking away from the Clintons, is that this is her doing a power maneuver. This is her, as a junior senator from New York, trying to flex her influence, not just in Washington, but nationwide. And I wouldn't be surprised if you were to see her start to do certain things that would not put her in the position to necessarily run for president in 2020, but put her in the position where she would become more influential within the party and with Democratic Party and within the potential next administration, assuming the next administration would be Democratic. So if Trump loses in 2020, my prediction would be that she would put herself in a position to either replace somebody that would join the administration, such as a Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or some other establishment Democrat who would join the administration. She would actually replace those people. I think that she is looking for a more powerful position, and I question the immediate assumption that she would run for president, because I don't think she is that ambitious, because she knows that it would be too far a leap. She is not tall. She is not that charismatic. She is soft-spoken. So she is not someone, in my opinion, and I think she knows this about herself, she is not someone in the position that could galvanize a mass movement in the same way Bernie Sanders could. When it relates to the progressives, which she has styled herself as, she could attract the establishment dollar. She could attract the support of certain establishment figures. But so long as Clinton is still in power, and she still is, even though her power is greatly diminished currently, Kirsten Gillibrand is not in a position where she could achieve the position where she could win a primary, because she is not backed by the establishment. She could attract money in Wall Street, but she is not influential enough to attract enough money to where she could be a Jeb Bush and just spam money onto everything, just get all the commercials, all the endorsements, get everything like that, because she has all the money backing her. She's not in that position, and she is not accepted well enough within progressive circles outside of like your establishment groups like GLAAD and the race groups, and all the women's groups would definitely endorse her, but it's not enough. You actually need to have some ground support, and I don't believe she actually has that. She's very politically influential. She has connections, in that there are Republicans that would go soft on her because she is willing to work with them. And that's one of the big things that I know about working in her office, is that she specifically goes out of her way to not badmouth Republicans. And she does that to make sure that she doesn't intentionally antagonize them, so that she can come in like pretty much the slick car salesman that she is and work them over and get them to come on board for something she wants to happen. She's done that in the past, and she will continue to do that into the future. So until such a time that it becomes incredibly politically advantageous to then go after Republicans. Until such a time comes, and you can see this even with the issue with Roy Moore and others, is that she still doesn't go as far as to say, like, oh, this is the Republican Party, these are conservatives in general, they love pedophiles and all the rest. She doesn't go that far. She holds back, and she does that intentionally. She's a very slick operator. No matter who you talk to as it relates to like political insiders in Washington, I guarantee you, if you ask them about her, they will tell you exactly what I'm telling you right now. That she's very slick, she knows what she's doing, she's hyper-focused on optics and press events and press ops and photo ops. She very rarely has gaffes, she very rarely has embarrassing moments, and she's very conscious of that. She's very aware of what she says, what she does, what she supports, what she doesn't. I wouldn't say necessarily, though, that she is the best kind of politician for the job, because I don't think that she actually has the experience necessary to even run on that national stage. Like, one of the problems with Hillary Clinton was that she was so inexperienced generally, that whenever she would be put in a major position, such as when she became the Secretary of State under Barack Obama, she wasn't competent to hold that position. If you compare her tenure in that position when compared to John Kerry, disagree with what happened under the Barack Obama administration. John Kerry was very competent within that position. Not wholly competent. He did have fuck-ups, and there were leaks and shit. But the fact is that if you compare his tenure to that of Hillary Clinton, it's day and night. It's someone with a very firm grip of the wheel versus someone who's a fucking disaster, who's just wildly ambitious and well out of her depth. And that's who Hillary Clinton is and always will be, and that's why she's a fucking loser. That's why she's a failure. A good comparison would be Kirsten Gillibrand versus Kathy Hochul, who's currently, I believe, the lieutenant governor in New York State. Kathy Hochul is a lot like Hillary Clinton. She's well beyond her depth, and she is a fucking corporatist loser. If you don't know New York politics, you probably won't really get these comparisons, but I'm hoping that this can translate to some degree. It's funny because Kathy Hochul actually represented my district for a while. She was a fucking loser. She is worthless, and I can't stand her because she's a lot like my current congressman in that she just panders, and my current congressman, who's a Republican, just panders. And he went from an establishment Republican to a Trump Republican, and he's still just a fucking slippery, greasy, likely corrupt, jerk-off panderer who I would be very surprised to talk with a Republican from my area and be like, do you legitimately support this guy? Do you really believe he actually believes any of the shit that he says? Because I really doubt he does. He just appears to be just a really greasy politician. And I think he's just there because no one runs against him. That's one of the faults in my area. The Democrats in my area are all fucking retarded. And no one runs against the guy. But I'm getting off track. It's still too early to really get into predictions for 2020 or even really 2018, although that's, only a year away, obviously. Not even really at this point. But if you take a look at the players on the stage so far, the only one that's really taken a clear shot as in terms of like this has been established that she's likely going to make a move is that indistinctly ethnic woman who has pretty much been tapped by Hillary Clinton to run for some kind of major office because she's just a mouth-breathing, empty suit fucking corporatist. She's a fucking loser. And that's what I mean. Like, the Hillary Clinton model of politics is wildly ambitious, blindly ambitious. You are blinded by your own ambition. You don't really give a shit about optics outside of the bare minimum that you think you have to do. There are so many female politicians that are so much like Hillary Clinton in that way, where they're cowards, they're always a step behind, where politics is. They're just chasing corporate money, and they don't really care about much else. They pander 24/7. They have no core. They have no principles. They're just incompetent. That's the one thing that is universally true about all these kind of female politicians, is that they are completely fucking empty shell incompetence, and they're always out of their depth in terms of what office they hold. They're not competent enough to hold that office. But I believe I broke away from saying it previously, but I'll give an example of a competent Democratic politician, and I would say that is the mayor of Buffalo. Byron Brown, I think, is one of the most competent politicians in my area, in Western New York. That can include Syracuse, Rochester. In Western New York, one of the most confident, competent, and just effective politicians is Byron Brown. And I'm surprised that he hasn't been more ambitious than just to be the mayor of New York, or the mayor of Buffalo. Because I think if you had somebody that could step to a major stage and become, say, like governor of New York, I think Byron Brown is definitely a guy that would fit into that glove, like fit into that role so smoothly that it would be shocking. That would be my estimation of him, because he is not super charismatic, but he has corporate backing. He's not corrupt as far as I can tell. He doesn't have like the image of corruption that Andrew Cuomo does, where corruption is just all around him. With Byron Brown, that's not true. He's been investigated before, and it always clears him. It always clears him. So you have to figure that at some point, maybe he has some shady dealings going on, but he's so clean that it has to be on purpose. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be intentionally legitimate to that degree when there's so much corruption going on in the area, but in the end, none of it actually touches you. That has to be intentional. And that's what I mean about competent. There's been so many goddamn politicians from my area, congressmen, state senators, state assemblymen. The list is endless in terms of Republicans especially, and this is not me dumping on conservatives, but Republicans in my area have a very big problem with corruption. And I'm not speaking to that being like of conservatism, but just specifically the Republican Party in my area is constantly having to deal with corruption issues. And my example would be of a competent Democratic politician from the state of New York that could rise to prominence because of the fact that he's competent and he's effective in what he does, would be a Byron Brown, because he is also always served, to my understanding, in the position of an executive, in being mayor. A senator or a congressman, obviously state senator, state assemblyman, or congressman, they have a very hard time filling the role of a governor or a gubernatorial position or an executive position, because it's different. So if you were to ask me who would I see in terms of really rising very sharply, potentially into the main stage of politics, especially here in New York, it's Byron Brown. That's who my money's on, if he wants it, because he's limited in his ambition. It's weird in that way. But Kirsten Gillibrand, she's not competent enough. She doesn't have the experience necessary to just run for president. She's not in that position yet. So while I do think she's looking for power, she's ambitious, clearly. She's looking for a new powerful position. She might be looking to replace Chuck Schumer. She might be looking to replace Nancy Pelosi or somebody like that, take those positions away from them eventually, or get tapped by them to take that position. She's clearly looking for more power. But in the end, she's not competent enough to actually win the primary. She's not competent enough to become a president. I don't think that if you listen to other people and they say, oh, she's going to run, I don't think those people are really very thorough, or maybe they're just pandering to that to get attention. But I wouldn't take them seriously. I wouldn't take that argument seriously. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks for listening.